Okay, yeah, there we go. Great. It is so good to see you guys. I mean, I really look forward to each Sunday coming and getting a chance to be with you guys. I don't know about you guys. Who here likes dogs? Dogs. Puppies, yeah. Dogs, yeah. Yeah, I love dogs. I mean, I can't imagine my life without dogs. I'm 62 years old. And there's been one 6-month period in my life when we didn't have a dog. And that was when I was 4 years old. It was the worst 6 months of my life. Worst 6 months of my life. But yeah, anybody here know what the term heart dog means? A heart dog, every dog is exceptional. Every dog is wonderful. A heart dog is one of those dogs that is truly, truly magical. And even when you've been separated from them, they still seem to live in your heart. And most people who have dogs are lucky if they have, 1 or 2 heart dogs. Glenda and I have been blessed to have 3. The first was Osa. She was a half yellow lab, half whatever cleared a 6-foot fence. She was a rescue of ours, and she was named Osa because she was coal black and looked exactly like a little bear. So Osa was a name that fit. Osa was the most loyal dog you've ever known in your life. In fact, you pull up the Oxford English Dictionary and you look up the word loyal, there's a picture of her there, okay? Now, we had another heart dog shortly after Osa, and that was Millie. Millie the Wonder Dog. Millie was a Gordon Setter. A Gordon Setter is the Scottish version of the Setters, and they're really pretty dogs. They're black and tan, and you have a semi-long coat. Well, Millie was born with a martini in one paw and a cigarette in the other. Millie had the personality of the alpha sorority girl at the party saying, "Who's going to tap the keg? It's time to tap the keg." That was Millie. Now, Glenda took Millie, she was a stunningly beautiful dog, and Glenda took Millie on the show circuit, and they cleaned the slate. I mean, Millie became the 2nd-ranked Gordon Setter in all of the United States. And she was just larger than life. When you're at the show and somebody 3 rings over starts applauding, for Millie, that's for me, And she perks up and she's all excited. This is wonderful. We absolutely loved Millie. When she was about 10, we took her to the vet just for a routine checkup. And the vet told us, "I'm very, very sorry. She has a degenerative joint disease, and you'll be very, very lucky if you have her for 1 more year." And, we were heartbroken, got home, shed a few tears, and then Glenda had the wonderful idea of saying, "Let's make this the year of the Millie, and we're going to try to do everything we can to introduce her to new experiences, new pleasures, new things that are fun." And so we started doing that, and one breakfast time on a Saturday, I remember Glenda said, "Millie's never seen the ocean." Well, that's that, so the next weekend, we packed up the Mini Cooper, threw Millie in the back, and headed to Florida. We got there about 8 o'clock at night, so it was dark, you couldn't see much, and went into our hotel, crashed. We got up before sunrise and threw Millie in the back of the Mini Cooper. And I remember this like yesterday. She would always do this with us. We'd open up the sunroof, and she'd put one paw on the passenger seat, one paw on the driver's seat, and stick her head out the sunroof. And so we drove to the beach with Millie's head sticking out the sunroof the whole way. And we got there, and we pulled into the parking lot, and there was already a crew of landscapers there, about 15 or 20 guys with blowers all blowing dust on each other. You've seen that happen. And the crew boss came over when we opened up the hatch, and Millie jumped out, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful dog I've ever seen." And Glenda said, "Well, her name's Millie, and she's never seen the ocean before. And so this guy gets down on his knees, cradles Millie's head in his hands, and says, "Millie, your life's going to change in 17 seconds. And then he stood up and walked off, and we clipped on the lead, headed toward the dunes, and I checked. It was exactly 17 seconds. We got to the top of the dunes, and Millie saw the ocean. Something larger than her personality that she had seen for the first time. And her head snapped to the left and then slowly panned all the way to the right and then back to the center. And then she bolted and pulled that lead out of my hand, and my wrist hurt for days. But the surf was about 4 feet tall at this time, and there was nobody else on the beach for miles on each side. And Millie bolts for the ocean and busts through wave after wave after wave after wave, having the time of her life. And then she turns around, and she'd never really been on sand before, and she goes running up into the dunes about, I'm going to say 30, 40 meters. And then, unfortunately, the dysplastic hips gave out, and she had to stop. And I ran over, and I scooped her up in my arms, the wet, sandy fur up against my chest, and I carried her back to where Glenda had been so good as to actually set up our chairs, and plopped her down in between us. And for the next few hours while we stayed at the beach, Millie did nothing but stare out at that ocean, and about every 10 minutes, she'd nudge my arm and then go, like that, like, "Dad, Daddy, can you believe how big?" Well, my life became a little bit more big that day. I think yours did too, didn't it? Yeah. We were so happy. We were so blessed that the year of the Millie lasted 3 years. She was with us for 14 and a half years, and that was a massive blessing. So Osa and Millie have been with us for large swaths of our lives. They were my friends. Even though they were dogs, they were my friends. And they taught me so much, because as friends, who are your best teachers in life? They're your friends, aren't they? Absolutely. They taught me so much. From Osa, I learned that one never loses anything by being loyal to those you love. And from Millie, I learned it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if your hips hurt. Jump through that wave. Run through that sand. Live life large. And then, here in Mexico, there was Maya the Magnificent. Maya was the dog who never gave up on love. She was a Great Dane. Beautiful, beautiful Great Dane. Absolutely loved her. And I only had Maya for 7 months. She was only with us for 7 months. But she was the soul, despite her hard life, refused to give up on love. She had been horribly abused, beaten, tied to chained to a telephone pole in Guadalajara, and left to die. Now, we came here to Mexico with 2 dogs already. We had Chaucer, our 60-pound English setter. We had Sassy, our 80-pound golden retriever. We were kind of full at the inn. But we get a phone call from 2 wonderful people, Jim and Kathy McSweeney, who had somehow gotten involved with the rescue group that had gotten hold of Maya. And they had started to foster her, but they had Chihuahuas. Does anybody see that there might be too many variables in this equation? Yeah, so they were looking for a permanent home. Jim and Kathy brought Maya over, and I love this. They did what I would call the assumptive sale. They didn't bring Maya over just by herself. They brought Maya over with a bag of dog food, a water bowl, a food bowl, a dog bed, and toys. Well, guess what? we fell in love with Maya right at first sight. So it was not a decision that was hard at all. This dog who had been beaten and left to starve never gave up on love, and she would let us know that she loved us constantly, constantly. When I came home, she'd put her paws on my shoulders and lick the top of my head. That's how big she was. And she would let our friends know that they were loved too. Absolutely let our friends know, to the point where some of our friends, I'm not going to mention names, some of our friends who had been a little off-put by her size got to the point where they would call us up and say, hey, can we come over and play with Maya? It's not, can we come over and maybe we can have a glass of wine together or something? No. Can we come over and play with Maya? We don't want to play with you. We want to play with Maya, you know. And so they'd come over, and Maya would just love on them. And it was just kind of a magical thing. And as she gained weight and, for a time, health, she became a 150-pound lap dog. I mean, let that sink in. 150 pounds. When it was nap time, she would stretch out on one of our sofas that's 6 feet 10 inches in length, and she took up the entire length of the sofa. When it was movie time for Glenda and I at night, she would lay across Glenda's lap and mine and watch the movie with us. But our other dogs, Sassy and Chaucer, just ignored her. They just did not want to play. Day after day, this dog who refused to give up on love tried to get them to engage in play to no avail. And then came Thanksgiving. And I remember this like it was yesterday. It was Thanksgiving, we had just finished eating, and Maya is in her usual spot on the couch. Chaucer comes trotting by, and Maya takes one of her paws, and literally her paws were the size of my hand. And she reaches down and whacks Chaucer right upside the head. Well, she would do that every day, but this time, Chaucer didn't ignore it. This time, Chaucer turned around, tail wagging, and pounced. Well, guess what? When you have well over 200 pounds of dog wrestling on a couch, that couch vibrates and moves throughout your entire living room, seemingly on its own. Well, they finished their wrestle after about 5 or 10 minutes, and Maya sat back on one of the cushions just kind of like a human, and Chaucer stood up and met her gaze, and in unison, both of them smiled. Both of them smiled, big, broad, open dog smiles, looking straight at each other. And in that moment, I saw a burst of joy in Maya's eyes that I had never seen before. I mean, oh sure, she had her human friends, you know, who would call up for play dates with her. Heck, with Glenda and I. But from what we knew of her past, this was the first time another dog had been her friend. And the spirit in the entire room became one of utter, tangible, palpable joy. A canine friend of her own who knew, unlike us humans, knew what it was to be a dog. It was almost like at that time Maya knew what it was to become real. To become real. Oddly, the intimacy and affection in our whole family literally grew that day. It grew that day and has never returned to its previous level. As we all became a little bit more real at that time. And Maya and Chaucer played together every day from then on until she passed. And we knew that she was passing, and we separated the dogs, and Chaucer was half a house away. And on the exact moment that Maya passed, he let loose with the most mournful wail I think I've ever heard in my life. They were friends. Well, they were friends, we were friends. Obviously, you can tell that my friendship with my dogs has changed me, but that's just dogs. What about humans? My friendships with my humans are much more meaningful. Every Sunday after church, we go out to brunch. with some very fun people. And friend is not a word I will ever use lightly. We go out with our friends, and at this brunch, the interaction with these friends, often through the vehicle of laughter, absolute laughter, changes my life. That's human, friends. What about God? What about God? That brings us to John 15, 12 through 17. This is Jesus talking. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Now, culture seems to try to communicate that Jesus was some kind of strict disciplinarian and not very much fun at all. What's his command? Is it abstain from? Be sure you don't. No, this is a positive command, isn't it? My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Wow. Moving on to verse 13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. In our culture, we tend to cheapen our vocabulary, don't we? We tend to misuse words about things that it has no business being associated with. You know, somebody can say, "Oh, I just love my new toilet paper." Oh, really? Have you been intimate with it? The word love has a much deeper meaning. Friends. We'll say, "Oh yeah, that guy, he's a really good friend of mine." And, it may be somebody you're passing in the hall at the office, and they don't even know your last name. Are they your friend? Really? Or are they, almost, are they just a good acquaintance? We misuse our words. But the word Christ used here for friend was a very specific word. It was phileo, which is often translated as brotherly love. But you go into the Greek, and the deepest meaning of phileo means one who is deeply beloved. Deeply beloved. I had a friend come visit, Glenda and I had a friend come visit one of my best friends ever in my life, and I hadn't seen him in 25 years. He was deeply beloved. Who was deeply beloved to you? And let me ask you this question, now that you have that picture in your mind. Can you spend time with them without your life changing? My life changed this week. The interaction between Glenda and Phil and I. Yeah. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. And he reiterates this. This is my command. Love each other. Love each other. Friends. Friendship. Let's face it, guys, our families are assigned to us, aren't they? Sometimes we're lucky enough to have those familial relations turn into friendships, but a friendship is a relationship by choice, by mutual choice. And here's one of the pieces of magic I think about when I meditate on Christ, which I highly recommend doing. He chose to be fully human. Yeah. Not some pie-in-the-sky, distant master. He chose to become human to experience the same temptations we do, the pains, the joys, the love. And like when Chaucer interacted with Maya and became her friend, she had the experience of finally having a real canine friend. And that made her ever so much more real. And Christ, fully God and fully man, wants to be your friend. And friendship, knowing the meanings of the word, is transformative. It can't be anything but. Jesus. I'm not talking about the one the culture represents to us as either some smarmy, wimpy bobblehead. Passive-aggressive, wimpy guy. No, that's not who I'm talking about. I'm not talking about some holier-than-thou judge that we see portrayed way too often. I'm talking about the Jesus of the gospel. Here's a Bible study for you. Look through all the gospels to see where Jesus was at parties. That's a fascinating study. It's a very fascinating study. I'm talking about the guy who hung around with fishermen. I mean commercial fishermen. I went to high school in Houston. Commercial fishermen. They're tough guys. If your name is Sons of Thunder, these guys are probably tough guys. This is, the Jesus who, like the joke says, had a very, very low bar tab because he'd walk into the bar, say, "Bartender, give me 12 glasses of water," and then wink at the disciples. Okay, some of you guys got that. Water into wine, right? Yeah, low bar tab. I'm talking about the guy who saved all the sacrificial animals in the temple, made a whip, flipped over the money changers' tables. I'm talking about the transformative man, fully God, fully man, Jesus, who has sent a friend request to the inbox of your soul. The inbox of your soul, of my soul. As I think of that transformative love, what comes to mind is one of my favorite stories from childhood, from the book The Velveteen Rabbit. Are you guys familiar with The Velveteen Rabbit? I see a few nods here. So I've got a passage from that. The Skin Horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath, and most of the hairs in his tail had been pulled out to string bead necklaces. He was wise, for nursery magic is very strange and wonderful. And only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced, like the Skin Horse, understand all about it. "What is real?" asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came in to tidy up the room. "Does it mean having things that buzz inside of you and a stick-out handle?" "Real isn't how you're made," said the Skin Horse. "It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you, really loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" asked the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the Skin Horse, for he was always truthful. "When you're real, you don't mind being hurt." "Does it happen all at once, like being wound up?" he asked, "or bit by bit?" "It doesn't happen all at once," said the Skin Horse. "You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or who have sharp edges or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off. And your eyes drop out. And your joints get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. "I suppose you are real," said the rabbit. And then he wished he had not said it, for he thought the Skin Horse might be sensitive. But the Skin Horse only smiled. "The boy's uncle made me real," he said. "That was a great many years ago. But once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always. Let's read that again. But once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always. Being real. That's what a friendship with Jesus brings to us. The transformative Jesus. The guy whose first miracle was to turn water into wine. What's the significance of wine? It's a beverage that has a transformed essence. It started off as grape juice, and then it became so much more. That's what Jesus offers to us. The transformative Jesus, when we accept that friend request, instantly pulls us into being real. And then works in our lives every day to make us even more real, even more aware of the depth of His love for us every day. You know, when I was 20, when I was 30, when I was 40, when I was 50, I'm 62 now. I looked a lot better. I really did. I'm 62 now, and I've got to say I'm kind of tatty. Have to understand that I'm kind of tatty. I've had a good portion of my hair loved off. I do know that. But I am so much more real now than I was when I was 20, when I was 30, when I was 40, when I was 50. And I credit that to the transformative love of Christ, whom I call my friend because He first called me friend. Have you accepted that friend request that He sent to the inbox of your soul? That's probably the most important question you can ever ask yourself. It brings a transcendent reality. That begins immediately and then only grows. And it lasts for always. And nothing can change that. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for becoming human so that you could interact with us in a way we can understand. Thank you for loving us. You faced every temptation we've faced, and yet you remained pure. You know who we are, where we fail, where we are at our weakest, and still you choose not just to love us, but you want to be our friend. You want to make us real. And so today, Jesus, I accept that friend request. Please come into my life, make me real at that moment, and then begin the process of making me more real every day. And thank you that that lasts for always. I ask this in your name.